Buddy. So yeah, I guess the quick life story of mine is I was in the tech industry for a while, quit to go do a PhD in psychology, and then had a health scare and realized I wanted to do things to speed the whole system of science up. Really selfishly save me, right? I mean, if you've ever been in that situation of having a health scare, knowing somebody you love who has one, you know that just like science can't move fast enough, right? And like all of us in science know how inefficient it can be and how old the systems can be. Coming to science from the tech industry felt like traveling into the past and it shouldn't have, right? So my whole thing is kind of bringing some of these user experience design principles that are sort of just bread and butter of the tech industry and applying them to science in a rigorous way, to try to speed up that knowledge dissemination with modern design practices and things. And I started with a poster, went viral for the first poster cartoon, and then followed that up ever since and have new stuff coming on presentations. And I work full time on redesigning the scientific article. So let's get started. Let's see. It's kind of my mission in life to make all of y'all's jobs a little bit easier to do science. Let's see, because it can be stressful. All right, cool. Thumbs up, Ken, if you can see my screen. Naomi, good, cool. Okay, so what you're about to learn is something called user experience design. It's not like graphic design. User experience design, the basic idea of it is that you sort of acknowledge from the start that human beings are like limited. We evolved to process information very lazily, right? Like we want to get the most reward for the least effort. That effort is a variable. We don't like to talk about that in science a lot. Like everybody's super hardworking, everybody's smart, but like sometimes you just like you're going to do the minimum a lot of times, like, and that's okay. Like that's kind of almost efficient in a lot of ways. And so you kind of have to design for that sort of human laziness instead of trying to pretend it doesn't exist. That's the whole idea. So all of you can be really good at user experience design. You sort of just have to admit your own sort of inner like limitations. So start off with a little psychology. So my PhD is in work psychology, and there's a concept in psychology called goal orientation. When you present a poster like the scientist in the middle, your goal is to sort of get your science out to everybody at the conference and you want to learn all of their science, right? But a lot of times you forget that. You just start making your poster for like, just really quick just to get the task done or to like make your advisor happy or just like look like everybody else, right? Those are two different motivational orientations. One, like you're just trying to get your research out because you believe in it, and the other one, you're just trying to like not look stupid and get an A plus, right? And a lot of us got to science because we were good at like making the teacher happy, getting an A plus, right? But the more you can adopt that mentality for your poster of like, I just want everybody in this room to learn what I learned, that will do more for you than anything else I can show you. So the traditional advice for scientific posters is like this. You want to design your poster like a mousetrap, right? Where it's like you want to design a really catchy, clickbaity poster to trap people into talking to you, right? And a lot of the advice for years has been around designing like a better mousetrap for your poster. But the problem with this whole like mousetrap approach to scientific posters is if everybody in the room is doing that, right? When you walk through the poster session as an attendee, you're like, you don't want to get trapped. It's going to take you 7 minutes per poster or whatever. You know that if you choose one poster, you're gonna have to lose, getting to learn something from all these other posters, right? So it's really kind of a flawed approach, I think. It limits a lot of learning in poster sessions, and it's why a lot of people only learn from like 2 posters a session out of 100, right? I think a better analogy is something like this. If you're gonna play a game with your poster, play a game like this. Some of you have played this. This is called a tower defense game. You are the little alien eyeballs, and you're trying to shoot pellets at the little bugs before they get to the cookie and kill them. If you picture yourself as the alien eyeball and your poster, right? Like you and your poster are the alien eyeball, and the little bugs are like the attendees walking through the poster session. And what you're trying to do is shoot knowledge into their brain before they get bored and leave, right? Before they get to the exit. So if you adopt that approach of like, instead of like thinking my poster was useless because no one stopped at it, trying to like lower your bar for success. If somebody walks by your poster and they look at it and they learn something from it and they kind of give you a nod like, huh, and they keep walking, that counts. You just impacted that person, right? They don't have to stop and have a 10-hour conversation for your poster to be effective at teaching people. So try to remember this as your analogy. The way to win this game is really easy. So you have to think about your poster in distances, in physical distances. So you have your poster, right? And you think about your biggest audience by distance. So like maybe a couple people are gonna like walk up to your poster and read it in detail or talk to you. One study we did found it was like an average of like 6 stops or whatever, and that was including the gigantic outlier who thought they got like 80 stops or whatever. So it's not a high number of people that will stop, right? More than that will be the people who sort of pause in front of your poster, like 4 or 5 feet away, right, and kind of lean in a little bit and kind of like skim it a little bit and then keep walking, right? But your biggest audience when you present a poster is all the people walking by, the hundreds of people walking by. So if you want to get the max impact of your poster, design a little bit of learning for the people walking by, and that we think will convert more of them into stopping too. So you're kind of winning both games. So far, we found in 2 field studies, if you remove that giant outlier who had 80 stops, better posters, the poster designs I'm going to be showing you did get significantly more stops. And in the second study, it started trending that way. But like they at least don't get less, it seems like. But there's some kind of initial evidence that they might get even more stops, which makes sense theoretically. The idea is that if you get this fear of spoiling the ending or like giving away too much, but what happens when you give away a piece of knowledge when people walk by is it establishes your poster as sort of having a good rate of return. You're like, this poster taught me something in 10 seconds. What could it teach me in 30 seconds, right? Easiest way to do this is to just change your title. You can do everything else the same on your poster, just change the title to a declarative title. So here is a traditional scientific poster, right? And in the title, just watch this title area right here, right? If you just use a declarative title like this, text analysis can predict social conflict in teams. Boom, that's a hit of information in big text that people can read as they walk by, right? These kind of declarative titles are really all you need to do to your poster to make it possible for everybody who walks by your poster to learn something if they pay attention to it for a second. And if every poster in the room used a declarative title, you as an attendee could actually kind of take something away from most posters. They're still a little cluttered and things like that, very cluttered, but you would get something, which is something. So if you do nothing else, please just use a declarative title on your poster. That'll go a long way. A lot of journals are like considering switching to declarative titles. So here's a neuroscience journal. You can see like even if you're not in neuroscience, right? Like you guys are pretty far in corrosion, but like I'm not in neuroscience either, but I can read these things like physiological diversity influences detection of stimulus envelope and fine structure in neurons. I don't know what that means, but I know God, I can get a sense that it's telling me something, right? It's not just sort of like investigating the dynamics of blah, blah, right? So if you don't read anything besides the title, you're still getting something, right? That's the idea of a declarative title. Declarative titles can get like more citations. People are worried about them like over-claiming, but they haven't really found evidence for that, especially if you speak in past tense, like, in a mouse model, this happened versus, like injecting yourself with, bleach will raise your IQ. You can be like injecting this mouse with bleach raised its IQ. Don't do that. Terrible example. Anyway, so here's 3 different titles for the same study. First one, investigating the effectiveness of differential mask usage strategies. This is kind of like a traditional like scientific title. It basically says nothing, right? If you dial up that information sent to the title, you get like a clickbait title, right? Like this. Worried your cloth mask isn't filtering coronavirus? This hat could make it more effective. And like anytime you see those question mark titles, right? Like in the posters, they're clickbaiting you. They're like, hey, stop and find out more, right? And like not everybody stops. And so the people who don't stop get nothing. If you do a declarative title, it's something like this. Put a nylon stocking over a cloth mask to make it more effective at filtering out coronavirus, right? Or when we put one over a cloth mask, it made it more effective, past tense, right? That is literally a hit of information, and that's possible to like, give people something as they walk by, and they may be more likely to stop because of it. Past this title, the game of a poster gets really hard. I think a lot of people, when you design a poster, you think that like everything you put on the poster gets read, but the reality is much more bleak than that. So here's a picture of a real poster session. Where is this guy looking? Like, what's the poster doing in this picture? Like nothing, right? Like he's looking only at the attendee. And what's happening here, I think, is something called social information foraging. So basically, I think you decide that there's this like social pressure here and this poster is really overloading. So it's easier for you to just ask the presenter to explain than to actually read the poster itself, right? You've all had this experience if you've been to a poster session. You look at the poster for for a second and then you're like, so tell me about your study. And then you get this explanation, right? The poster itself, like it didn't matter what he said in this like, tiny future of work bullet point down here, right? Or whatever. Like he made them big, he did a good job with it, but almost none of this poster is actually being conveyed from the poster right here, right? Here's another one. So here, like you see this pattern a lot. Again, they're like 5 feet from this poster, right? What could you actually see at this distance? You could see like these images. Like he did a really good job making these images big. He made his graphs really, really big, right? But even from this distance, right? Like while he's talking and filling up all their cognitive load with his words, right? Like you're going to get what? Those pictures for sure, maybe the shape of the graphs, but not the captions, right? Like the 10 minutes he spent formatting his references or whatever was completely lost, right? So like not a lot of poster content is actually absorbed, I'm convinced. And then like I think the charitable thing is to say maybe half your poster content is read. I think the accurate thing is more like 10%. Like it's really bleak, and you have to get something across from your poster itself. You have to make it much, much bigger and much clearer than you're even comfortable with sometimes. So here's a good example. So you can see here a few things I like about this picture. One, again, they're at this like 3 to 4 foot distance, right? Try to pay attention to her while she's talking. But this figure is actually huge, right? Like they're looking at the figure. This is big enough for them to read the labels, for them to see what she's talking about, right? And what I love about this picture is that this is Cassie Wilson, I guess. And like when she made this poster, I bet she felt silly. I bet she felt like this is way too big. Like this picture is like way too big, and this is going to be silly. But it's actually exactly big enough, right? It's the right size. And so like when you're making things too big and too spaced out and leaving too much empty space, it's probably right. And we're going to see that in eye tracking. So what I'm going to show you now is a bunch of posters that I've run predictive eye tracking on. Predictive eye tracking is sort of like narrow AI that like trains on human eye tracking data and then tries to predict where people are going to look on the poster. So in this example, this is a traditional poster with predictive eye tracking run on it. The red is like, where the most focus is going to be, right? You can notice a couple of things with this. One of them, like first of all, it's everywhere, right? Like the focus is like scattered all over the place, right? And if you're using a traditional poster, this is probably what's happening when people look at your poster, right? They know to look at the title, but besides that, you get this probably scattered focus. Scattered focus like this is actually a measure of clutter. Like sometimes when they want to measure visual clutter, they look at how scattered the eye movements are. So this is like what you see when a design is extremely cluttered, right? And visual clutter can contribute to cognitive load and like make your poster feel harder to interact with, right? Make it like harder to actually like orient and know what's going on, right? So it's sort of a kind of a damning picture to me. The other part is like, look at these hotspots. Like what is paid attention to? Like the school logo is attracting attention. Literally the least informative thing on the entire poster is attracting the most attention, right? The side of these graph labels, you could probably argue are kind of important, but like probably not like the number one thing on the whole poster, right? So it's really kind of scattered and random. If you don't pay attention to controlling people's eyeballs, it'll just be random and scattered like this. And now we're going to show you some examples, and then you're going to get to try it. I'll shut up and you get to do stuff. So I'm going to launch a software called Adobe XD while it still lasts. Let's see. So Adobe XD, I think Adobe just bought Figma, if you guys are aware of that. So the software will not last much longer, as is evidenced by it crashing. Okay, try this again. Get a nice break. Here it goes. Cool. This software I'm using, by the way, the predictive eye tracking software, you can use it. So predictive eye tracking software ranges in price. If you've got a lab or something and you want to help people run predictive eye tracking on your designs, there are really nice ones. They're like 30 grand. This one is $9 a month. So it's like really affordable. And like you could pay $9 a month for your whole lab and all of your whole department, and all of your students could run unlimited eye tracking on all their poster designs, which I think is pretty cool. So I'll show you a couple different designs. So we had the traditional design here, right? Very cluttered, right? Scattered eye movements all over the place. And then we have another one. So this one right here is a sort of a prototype of a virtual poster I made with this whole poster. It has less than 1 minute of content on it. So it's still got a lot, but it can breathe a little bit more. The figures are bigger, the text is bigger, right? Everything's a little bit more spaced out. And when you run eye tracking on it, you get much better performance. So you can see what's in the hotspots, right? Like Negative affect is distracting. Positive affect promotes focus, which improves job performance. Mood affects attention at work. The sample size, right? Like those are, if you only paid attention to what's in the hotspots, as this suggests you would, like you'd still learn 3 things in the sample size. That's not bad. And these big figures, right? Like here are my hypotheses that are drawing attention, right? Like that's pretty good. There's a flow to it, right? And it's not perfect though. Like if I was designing this poster, what I would want is people to look at, like, let's say you want people to look at this top area right here. This mood affects attention at work. Let's see. Okay, so what I can do to fix this is I can just add negative space around it. So this is kind of comical, right? Like all of this space, but look how well it works. When you leave negative space around something like this, what it does is it creates local contrast. Anything on a very like high negative space background with nothing around it has very high background contrast, and that's why it draws your eye. Some of these local contrast is a really, really important predictor of where you're going to look. And if you look at the early Better posters, like the Better poster version 1, let's see, done a lot of these. So Better poster version 1 was literally just like a bunch of empty space with a finding in the middle, right? Your eye's going to go right to the middle, and people really like this first version needed more data, it needed more figures, I know, but like eye tracking wise, it works. Not perfect, but like it's going to pull that attention to the finding every time. And when I added a figure to it, which should be in here, here it is. You'll see that like here now in 1.5 I added a big figure, right? And now look where the attention goes. Main takeaway, key data, right? Like key figure, right? That's what you're getting first. That's better than like the school logo, right? So you can see how that negative space pulls the eye. People I think freaked out, especially on the first design, that like this color block here feels empty, and like your design feels so empty compared to what you're used to, which is filling up all the space with text. But that empty space helps direct the eye. So really, like as you get better at design, you sort of adopt this thing of like, when in doubt, just leave empty space, because then it helps people focus on what's there, even if it feels too empty to you. Here's a generation 2 Better poster, like Cam was talking about. This is like the crowd pleaser design, incidentally. People that like still hated me for this one, when they saw this one, they like came around. Like this one, like the first Better poster, like 70% were really supportive, and like 20% like hated it, and 5% hated me, 10% hated me maybe. But like this one, like 99% of you, like even people who like didn't like the first one, have come around to this one. So this is like, you can see the design hopefully is improved in a year of additional research, adding more methods, adding more data, but it's still kept one of the core Better poster features, which is that it guides your eye in a really deliberate way, right? It's still not perfect, but you can see that it's trying to guide your eye to the key takeaway, key image, through the methods in a row, through the results in a row, right? There's a deliberate eye control there that helps you sort of scan this poster more easily. And now you're going to get to practice this. So this skill of directing people's eyeballs is called visual hierarchy. And you're going to get to play it now. So you've seen this meme go around? This is like just indicated that whoever designed this knew something called visual hierarchy. They knew how to control where you're going to look first and second and third. And if you can do this with your poster, you help people process your data and your findings a lot faster if you can move their eyeballs. So you guys are going to try this. I'm going to send you a link in the Google chat. Thank you for listening to me this far. It's going to be a link to a Google slide. Let's see. Cool. Okay. Teams. Stop sharing for a second so I can find you. Sorry about that. That'll go in the YouTube video. Okay, let's see. Here we go. Cool. Thanks, Goel. You guys got a break there for a second. Sorry about that. Let's see. So you should see the link, and that'll bring you to a Google Doc. That should look like this. Oh, you guys are already in there. Oh, you guys are gonna be good at this. I can tell because you're already like engaged. It's gonna be fun. Okay. Okay. I'm gonna give you guys a second to all get in there. Cool. Okay. What I want you to do when you get in here is, if you look at my screen, pick a slide and right click on it and say duplicate slide. And then at the bottom in the speaker notes, write your name. Like here I've said like Mike's slide, do not touch, right? Like be like Naomi's slide, don't touch or whatever. Like put that in the speaker notes. And that is your slide. I will tell you that some of these slides are more evil than others, like more difficult. And the ones with the numbers in the corners are extra hard. Give everybody a second. When you're done with this game, you're going to be able to create things like that meme. And you're going to look at that like you will look at this first and this meme and realize that it's actually kind of easy. And like you'll be able to even create better stuff. It's pretty cool. All right. So what you're going to do, the rules of this game are that you want to make people, starting with me, and then your friends, look in the order of the numbers. So you're going to cover up the numbers. If you look at my screen, I'll show you some examples. You're going to cover up the numbers in a way that tries to make people look in that order while I give you sort of tips on how to do that based on research. So if you look at my screen for some examples, here's one, right? Your eye goes to his face first because we have the face area in our brain. That was his number 1. Hi, I'm Ortiz, big yellow. That was his number 2. Follow this arrow. This is number 3. Well done was his number 4, right? Like he told a little story. There's another one. I guess the cat first. I really need to see that data. It's a box and whisker plot. That was, oh, he almost had it. I need to see the data. One, don't overwhelm me. Good luck. So that was, he almost, whoever did this almost had a perfect, like 75%, right? Directed your eye in the right order. These two were backwards. Here's another 100%er. Just, hello, my name is Tanya. I hope you enjoy reading my slide as much as I enjoyed making it. And if you delete these boxes, 1, 2, 3, 4. So she just straight hacked depth perception, right? Like you feel like you're going into the distance with this. And that's all you really have to do a lot of times is just hack onto depth perception. So that's what you're going to do. I'm going to give you like 5 minutes to do it. Besides that, there are no rules. Your slide is lawless. You want to like copy and paste from Google Images. You want to like change your background color. You want to like make font tiny, make font huge, right? My only like requests are limit yourself to maximum of 1 arrow. Like don't use more than 1 arrow. Arrows are kind of cheating. Which you can see on posters because people like use too many arrows when they can't figure out how to direct the eyeball. So try to avoid using arrows. And then the other rule is like don't use animations because animations are completely cheating. But I've seen people try every kind of little hack. Other than that, go nuts. Your slide, your rules. And I'll start a timer for 5 minutes and I'll start giving you some evidence-based tips.
Mike, there are some people who did not understand what they're supposed to do. So can you just quickly repeat?
Sure. Yeah, so I'll start with my slide. So basically, if I want to make you look in this order, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? What I'm going to do at the end is we're going to cover up our numbers. You're going to cover up your numbers to try to make people look in the order of the numbers. And then I'm going to like open your slide and yell out what I see first, like cat, bar graph or whatever, and see if you directed my eyes in the right order. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And I'll give you tips on doing that. Okay, cool. So start a timer for 5 minutes starting now. You guys have 5 minutes. It'll go fast. And then I'm going to give you tips that are mildly illustrated thanks to, I wrote a Substack on this to consolidate the research. So there is a lot of research on how to control people where people look. Your first tip is that like faces are noticed really early. So you can use this one of two ways, right? In this game, you're kind of not just thinking about how to emphasize things. You're used to that, make it bold, underline, red, right? You're also thinking about how to slow down things, how to make people notice things later, right? That's part of the game, is learning how to make people see things earlier and how to make people see things later, because that's just as useful, right? So your number one probably should have a face on it. It doesn't have to, but like that will help you, right? Because you notice faces really quickly. We know that the center of the design is processed really early, right? This can work for or against you. So like if your number one is in the center, that's going to be an easier slide for you. If your number one is off in the corner, right, and like your number four is in the center, you're going to have to do something to really speed up the processing of that number one and slow down that number four in the middle, right? You're going to have to fight against that natural center bias. Your next tip is depth perception. So a lot of these visual hierarchy things, like even animals will sort of pay attention, try to figure out with their visual attention what's important, right, in whatever they're looking at, right? And now I'm kind of going off research here. There is research showing that depth cues, like things that feel closer, or vice versa, things that feel farther away or blurry, right, affect when you're going to see something. Evolutionarily, I could probably guess that like something that feels closer, you need to pay more attention to. Doesn't seem like a leap. But there are a lot of ways you can hack into depth perception. Like big things feel closer, small things feel further away, right? Very like high contrast things, like dark on a light background, light on a dark background, feels close. Low contrast things, like you think of like, medium blue on a darkish blue background or whatever, has a low contrast, right? That's going to feel further away. So high contrast, close, low contrast, further away. Size, again, big things close, small things far. You can use blur effects if you want, like focus things close, blurry things far. Your next tip, let's see, is that contrast is everything. So there's a famous design book that shares sort of a design sort of rule of thumb that's like or like mainstay rule, and that's like your eye goes to where the most contrast is first. And I remember reading that before I finished my PhD and be like, oh, that's useful. Your eye goes to where those contrast is first. And now I've read more papers than I ever wanted to read on like visual salience and all that kind of stuff and scan path prediction for this game, really. And it still holds up. Even the algorithms that predict where your eye is going to look use contrast because it's like that good. So contrast can mean, here's some feedback, but think about that two ways, right? If you want somebody to notice something earlier because it's your number one or your number two, really, really high contrast, right? Later, low contrast. Your next tip is ease of processing. So like generally, remember what I said about, like you still have 2 minutes, by the way, you're still really good on time. Remember what I said about people processing information very lazily. You're going to look at things that are easy to process before things that are hard to process. So an image is easier to process than text. So you could probably put like an image over your number one and like text over your number four, right? Because you can use the text to slow down processing. People notice images really quickly over text. And I think there's probably some case to be made that you're going to notice a color image over a black and white image, for what that's worth. So like a color image with a face, really, really like early noticed, and then like a black and white image, no face, maybe blurry would be noticed less. Still got a minute left. And your last tip is that people kind of look in places that they've had success looking before. Maybe a couple more tips. It's like top left is a big one. Your next one is alignment. Still got almost a minute. So if you make things share an edge, like a top edge, right, it creates sort of an invisible line that people will follow. So if you want to line up your number one across the screen from your number two, that'll work. And your final tip, I think, is rhyming. If you look at a red square, something, and use like, oh, look, another red thing, the red triangle, and you kind of rhyme to it. So you can use that to jump people all the way across the page. Still got 30 seconds. And I will give you the gift of silence from my voice for the last 30 seconds. And we will play more of these. Ten seconds. Okay, pencils down, mice down. Anyway, okay, I'm gonna do the first one, and then I'm gonna call on one of y'all to do the second one. If you want to look back at my screen. Okay, here we go. Panda China, image of China. Welcome to Panda Land. First, that's a really clear one that faces work, right? Like if I've never, because these are all good images, right? Also, I'm in Hong Kong right now, so this speaks to me. China, and I went 2, 3, perfect. Whose was this? Claim your genius.
Yes, that was me.
Nice. Okay, who is this?
That's me, Sneha Goyal. I'm from.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Okay, you want to do the next one? It's
Yep.
perfect job. You did like the, I think the bright color of China and the big size really work for you there. Panda was perfect. Okay. Cool. All right, you ready to do the next one? I'm just gonna pull it up. Just yell out what you see first. Okay. Just be like blah blah blah. You ready? You can unmute. Sneha.
Sorry. Yes.
Oh, you're good.
Sorry,
Okay, ready?
I lost in between.
Oh, you're good. You ready?
Yes.
Just yell out what you see first, second, third, fourth. Ready?
Mm-hmm.
Here we go. Go.
So it's the dragon, then the thunderbolt, then the text all are they, and then yes.
I think Jonah had this one. Okay, thanks. Okay, so one variable here that Jonah, I think maybe you figure this out, but like the dinosaur's looking in this direction, that matters, right? You're gonna follow where he's looking. I'm sure this is right. Dinos are dead, but like the directional movement of the arrow, yellow. Fun fact about yellow, you have like the red and green cones in your eye, and I think yellow stimulates both of them the same. Like it flips it, like it stimulates the red and green at the same time. So it's like that's why it's attention getting. It's physically stimulating. And dinos are dead, or are they? Yes, 4. Perfect score. Nice job, Johan. Johan, you want to do that next one?
Sure.
Thanks, Nea. Okay. We might have time for all of these because we're going to try another game. Okay. Go.
Red square guy looking downwards. Oh, wow, that is supposed we're going to say nothing important, really.
It's perfect. I can already tell, right? I think like Daniel can jump in here if it was wrong, but 1, 2, there's got to be 3. It's cool that you can tell, right? That it was that when it's a strong hierarchy, you can tell. And that's one of the things they find in eye tracking studies is that when people look at a good design, their eye movements are correlated, like in the similar order, right? They look at elements in similar order. So like you can feel when it's like they're telling you where they want you to look. Okay, this is really good. Do a couple more of these real quick so we can have time for one more game. Let's see. Yarn ball, starry night, sign, light gray rain. Suresh, I think you had this one. Yeah. You guys are killing this. Okay, I think you guys got this. And I'm sorry I can't do more. I'm gonna do one more. This talk is amazing. Am I succeeding? We will find out soon. I think that's right. And you use proximity there, right? Like it's text, but it's right next to the image. That's why it works. Yeah, okay. I think you killed this. Anisha, let's see. Yeah, perfect score. Okay, okay. Well, you guys got this. I don't need it. You're good now. Okay, all right. You guys are all good at this. Let's save some of your slides for future ones if you don't mind. Okay, cool. All right, well, you mastered that skill quickly. Let's see what you can do with the next one.
I think we lost Mike.
Sorry about that. Just that. Okay, cool. All right, so that was visual hierarchy, right? I'll show you the next skill. So let me share my screen again. Cool. Okay. See my screen okay? Cool. All right. So visual hierarchy is a really fundamental skill. And if you look at better posters now, right, like someone wrote an article about better poster, like it was a designer and they were cynical. I'm like, it's just a really, really strong hierarchy. And I'm like, yeah, like that's all I did, right? Was like, that was the point, was to like sort of, if you put something in the middle of a better poster, people are going to see it first and then the sides second, right? The generation 2 better posters just add a third stage to the hierarchy, right? So you can see now, like, this is my number 1, right? The main finding. Number 2, big figure. Number 3, the sidebar, right? Same here, right? 1, the big finding, right, in the picture. 2, 3, 4, 5, probably, right? All better posters are really just extremely strong visual hierarchies that actually have findings instead of like titles. Just sort of, they teach you like a conversation. Hey, buddy, mood affects attention at work. Negative affect is distracting, which lowers performance. Number 3, positive affect promotes focus, which improves job performance. Here's my SEM model. So they sort of tell you things in a story in order. So that's why I hope you see better posters now, is they're really just my way of applying a really strong hierarchy like you just mastered to posters. There's a million ways you could do that. You don't have to use these layouts. There's, you're all good at this now. You can just make your own layouts that direct the eye. One other thing on posters with cognitive load before we get to like some fun stuff. So you all know this, right? This is like the terms and conditions for the iPhone, I think. Our iCloud. We've all clicked through this if you're not on Android, like a million times, and it's like a cultural joke that like no one reads these, right? There's even like a South Park episode where Cartman like agrees to one of these and ends up in a human centipede by Steve Jobs or something, and like it's a joke that no one reads them, right? But like in this case, like if you were the lawyer, you wouldn't be able to cut a single line, right? You'd be like, no, everything protects us, right? We can't take a single sentence out. And then you'd try to tell them, like, well, nobody reads them. Like, no, of course they read them. They click agree, like make them click agree twice or whatever. That'll prove that they read it. It's so irrationally obvious that like, that there's overload happening here, right? But a service like this, so this is a service called TOS didn't read, TOSDR, where this is the same terms of service in 5 bullet points ranked by severity. So right at the top, they can delete any of your data, files, music, messages at any time without notice. I didn't know Apple could delete my messages until I read this, right? I could have clicked through this 100 times and never known that, right? This is kind of a point that like, when you're afraid to put less on your poster, I want you to remember this, and I want you to remember that sometimes getting people 5 things is more than failing to get them 1,000 things, because sometimes you go over threshold and they get nothing, right? And it's this thing where people are like, well, they need to know everything about my study. There's this joke, my friend's a real designer for scientific posters, and she said that like a scientist said to her, send her a poster with like 64 graphs on it. And she asked him, what's the most important graph? And he said, all of them, which is true, right? Like technically that's true, right? All in science, every single one of those graphs is important, right? But you can't, you're dealing with a limited capacity for people, what people can process, and you really just kind of have to pick one, and it sucks, but like that's the limits of human processing, right? So I know some of you in the Mentimeter wanted like sort of some creative ideas for posters. That is what this last game is all about. We're gonna have to do this fast, but so the most fun concept in design is called natural mapping. The idea is that you want to be very close to reality with how things feel. Once you learn this, you're going to see it everywhere in your life because it applies to everything. So get ready to go down the rabbit hole here. So if you walk up with your oven in your kitchen after this talk is done and you look at where the switches are laid out, if they're laid out like this, they're not naturally mapped. I've had an oven like this. I lived in the house for years and I still couldn't remember what the second switch went to, right? Like I have to like think for a second, right? But if the switches are laid out like this, you'll always get it right, even if you're like coming home after drinking or whatever. You'll never make a mistake, right? Almost never. It's just much easier, much more intuitive. These are naturally mapped switches. Forget about ovens and just focus on like the feeling, what that feels like when something is really intuitive, right? Like you don't have to process it. You don't have to think about it. It's natural, right? It's congruent with reality. Same deal with light switches, right? If you have like the left switch turning on the right light bulb in your house and vice versa, it's going to be really confusing every time, right? That's going to cost you like seconds of thought, like every time you turn on the lights for your whole life, it's unnecessary if you just flip the switches, right? So if you think about the image for your poster, generally a more concrete, more literal image is going to be more naturally mapped and processed faster. So here's 3 images for the same finding again. Put a nylon stocking over your cloth mask and make it more effective. Put a nylon stocking over your cloth mask to make it more effective. Now at least it's a cloth mask. put a nylon stocking over your cloth mask to make it more effective. Literally a nylon stocking over a cloth mask, right? So like the more you can get away with doing this, and I think you guys are close to material science, this will be easier for you than it is for me in psychology, having to visualize all these abstract things. So you can do this with data visualizations too. So here's an unnaturally mapped one, right? And like reading this graph, you have to be like, what is an 8-pip stack of Legos? Like I play with Legos my whole childhood and sometimes in adulthood, and like I still know what an 8-pip stack is, right? But if you do the same graph like this, you almost don't need axis labels, right? Like it's so clear and so quick to process, right? And usually a lot of times if you see like the top ranking data visualizations and things like that, they have some degree of this natural mapping where there's this intuitive component that helps you process it extremely fast, right? So now you guys are gonna get to practice this really quick. Okay, we're gonna have to do this really fast, but one more link coming at you in Google Docs. Okay. All right. Link in the chat. Hopefully, you're going to see a Google slide. It looks like this. You're all in? Okay, cool. I'm going to go through this fast because we're getting thin on time. I want you to have time to try this. So the rules of this game are you're going to see 2 adjectives, or you can make up your own. I encourage you to Google random adjective. And then just take your slide, do the same thing, pick a slide, right-click, duplicate, put your name in the speaker notes, right? So you should be able to like right-click and then like duplicate Mike's slide or whatever, right? You can change the adjectives. Like if you Google random adjective generator, which I do more than I like to admit, you can try that. Or if you have an adjective in mind, right? Romantic, you can pick that and it's opposite, right? Like romantic and like, I don't know what the opposite of that would be, like unromantic or like, you know, platonic or something, right? Just pick an adjective and its opposite, or pick one of the examples, right? And what you're going to do is try to make me specifically feel what that adjective is. You're going to try to make it feel naturally mapped and intuitive. So you can see a couple examples here before I start the timer. Angry and sad, right? The cool, or natural and digital, right? Angry is a very angry, like intense color. This doesn't actually have to be red. If I made this intense green and this like a desaturated red, it would still feel right, right? It's the stimulation that's making it feel angry. Natural, this font has all these lines and stuff, right? There's also these like natural shapes. Digital is very rule bound, right? Or here's the classic example, past, future, right? It wouldn't feel right if you reversed this and tried to make it like future on the left. So just try to generate that feeling. I'll start a timer for 5 minutes. I'll give you some tips. Sorry guys, I'm gonna do like 3 minutes. We're gonna make this fast. Okay, same deal. Your practice at this, copy and paste Google images, no rules. So in 3 minutes, your first tip is that for natural mapping is that you have to feel it. And that's really hard for a lot of us in science who tend to be more analytical. I remember hanging out with like artists one time, and like this one artist, she looks at the sky and she called the sky dove gray. And I remember thinking like, I will never in my whole life be able to look at that color and think doves, you know, like how did you even do that? And what I realized is she didn't think it. She didn't like, what's an association with that color gray? She didn't do that. She just sort of felt it and let her like brain sort of associate, right? And you have to do that. If you want to make people feel an emotion with your poster or your presentation or whatever, you have to feel it, right? You can't think it through as much as that's kind of what we're trained. That's not a bad thing. You still have 2 minutes. So you have something called affective working memory. And what you're doing here is you can think of it as if your words are overloading or your pictures, your graphs are overloading, you can store data in the emotion channel. Still got 2 minutes. So you might start out with like Google image search for that word or whatever. If you do that, try to pick the image that actually makes you feel that word, not just the one that sort of represents it to you. You can also try to do this. The real game here, if we have more time, is the subtler the manipulation, the better. You still have 1.5 minutes. So like, if I was going to do good and evil, the subtlest manipulation of good and evil might be that like good is on top of the slide and evil is on bottom of the slide, right? You look up to lofty good things and down on these base evil things, right? Those kind of really subtle manipulations of the emotion for natural mapping are usually the most generalizable, because if you figure out how to use just a color or just a position to generate the feeling, you can start using that. You can use a color or a position or something in your data visualizations and your posters and things like that. Still a full minute. And it was a lightning round. We're cramming a lot in. Thanks, guys, for participating. If you think about the good and evil, like I could have, you still got 37 seconds. I could have pasted an image of an angel and a devil, right, for good and evil. But it's really not like, a caveman wouldn't recognize a devil as evil, but they'd probably recognize like the horns or like the abnormal skin color being red or whatever, or like the teeth or something, of the devil image, that they're triangles and sharp, right? So you want to kind of try to do things that a cave person would also feel, not these like modern things. 10 seconds. 2, 1. Cool. Okay. Back to my screen. I'm going to yell out these really quick. Okay, let's go through these. These are always good. Okay. Tasteful and distasteful. Facial expressions are a shortcut. Right? That's great, Snea. Like you're good at these games. Okay. Yeah, 100%. I feel that, right? Like you're rejecting the thing on the right. Like it's just like, and even like the color, right? That like sort of desaturated, like that dog does not look like super healthy right now. Whereas like this one's like very saturated colors. Let's see. Alive and Dead, that works. High and low, right? Dead is like the zombie font, right? It's decaying. It's literally the skin is dripping off that dead, right? And Alive is very like upright and like it's very like a tense taut kind of font, right? And then at the top of the tree too. Yeah, you understood the game, you guys. Smart cookies. All right. Oh, that was Cans. Nice job, Can. Okay, cool. Lazy and hardworking. Nice. Like you can pull from here, right? Like like this guy's really happy about working. Like the lazy is just like the flow of the eyebrows and things like that versus hardworking. Everything is like he's close to the keyboard. It's like there's these diagonal motion everywhere, right? I'm trying to pull that. Let's see. Odd and normal. This is a perfect example of like the subtleness, right? Like odd. You literally made it weird. I've never even seen words arranged that way. So Tim, nice brain. Sure. You understood odd a little too well there. Let's see, which is good. You won the game. So lean into that part of your brain that did that. Let's see, this thing was a previous example. Let's see, Daniel, I think this was probably rich and poor. Yeah, okay, yeah, exactly. Like he's sitting up high on his stacks of cash, right? And everything is like orderly. Angel and devil, yep. So you can pull here, like what is it about the devil, right? Like it's all these points in these triangles. And on the angel, look at this, like literally the wings, I swear to God, are like more, get it, are like more rounded, right? Like everything's circles and rounded, right? Where this is much more triangular, right? That works. Loud and quiet, right? Quiet, this feels peaceful. I can feel the silence in that image because it's so spread out and spaced, right? Cool. These are classic examples. All right, you guys got this game too. Cool, you made it through all of them. Okay. Thank you guys. That was a really fast game. And I hope you get the idea that like triggering emotion is not like a vulgarity. Like you're literally storing data. You can offload data from your visual and verbal stuff. Like if you have too many words in your poster, think about how you can say some of it with emotion, with a color, with a position, that kind of thing, and you don't need the words as much. So to sort of sum up here, these poster layouts you've seen, you can go use them right now. They're all available, open access on the Open Science Framework. Steal them, modify them, use them, share them. You don't have to credit me. You don't have to cite me. They're in the public domain. Go nuts. Come up with your own. Go crazy. Share them on Twitter. Tag me so I can retweet you. I have cartoons on YouTube on physical posters, social media posters, and on social media specifically with stuff coming on scientific articles and presentations. So you might have also seen these. So I think you guys have a related society who's doing one of these Twitter poster sessions. This I have a whole cartoon on YouTube about doing these sort of animated GIF posters. So you can go on Twitter and look into the hashtag Twitter poster and see people doing this. This is another idea for posters where you just sort of create a few slides in PowerPoint and export it to a GIF and share that for your research, right? Some of these like have been so successful that like people have created a hashtag for their little like grad student group or whatever to make these, and like that'll trend or whatever. So like your science can go viral with these kind of things. So do think about like after you've published, how to sort of promote it on social media and get that impact, right? It's really, really, I think, meaningful to get the impact and see people responding to your work. Last point, so if you're interested, that's posters. So to plug my full-time job, I work for a company called CurveNote. What we're doing right now is we're building sort of a Microsoft Word for researchers and scientists that can do, it's already built, but like trying to improve it. And it's built on an open source markup language called MIST for scientific articles. So if you're interested in the future of a scientific article, what it's probably going to be is something very machine readable, and you'll have something like this CurveNote tool where you have sort of, instead of Word or Google Docs, you'll probably write in something dedicated for you that has citations built in and has live code built in and things like that, and can export to any sort of journal format. So that's worth checking out. And they've been very supportive, and there's a lot of stuff coming with all the science UX stuff that they're like actively sponsoring. So I want to give them credit. And I joined CurveNote because I believe in what they're doing so much. So try that. Here's your articles. I'm on Twitter at Mike Morrison, and I have the Substack called UX Scientist. Thanks for coming, everybody. That was pretty fast squeeze of knowledge right there. I think you guys sort of mastered it all, though. So I'll open up to any questions while we got it.
Mike, thank you so much. This was amazing. So interactive, so much fun. I've never been to this much interactive talk, I think. Like, this was the first one. So thank you.
You got it. You mastered the hierarchy slide, and yeah. So it's cool for me because I get to see you guys learn the skills, right? Like see you like you mastered it. So now you can like you're actually getting skills out of it, just not information or whatever.
Yeah, it was awesome. Thank you so much.